You are welcome in our Danfe television.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Your book entitled South Asia, China Geoeconomics has recently been published. How is response to the book?
The book, this is the book, has been in market for almost 1.5 months now. So second print is now in market. So we have almost 3,000 copies of the first print going to the market and finished in 4 days. And there was shortage for some time. No copies were available in the market, so we had to bring second print as quickly as possible. So second print is in market, almost exhausted in the market. So I think the response of the readers to the book is very, very nice. That's what I think.
Your book has discussed on chronic instability of Nepalese politics. From an intellectual's point of view, what are the key reasons behind it?
There are more than one reasons behind it. We have a culture in Nepal to identify one single reason for the big problem Nepal is facing over the last almost 50 years. But when we see it from the bigger or wider angles, then we find economy is not working very good. The political system shaped by liberal democratic values have not been properly functioning. The education level is very, very poor. Still, significant number of people have been illiterate, and the education that we have been talking about is not a very quality education. It is a kind of education which creates masses of unemployed people. Territory itself is very rugged in the mountain and big pressure of population in southern plain area. So these are all problems looking from our perspective. But these problems would not have been problems, in fact, had we been able to manage country in a smooth way, non-intervention from others. I think we could develop our economy as fast as possible, and that would definitely lead country to the stability, to the better education, and to the better infrastructure development, and country would go up. But if you see the problem since 1950 in one way, or you can see it also quite back in 1814 when we were engaged to fight with the British and we lost our big territories, and British colonial rules from India had very direct intervention in Nepal, followed by the death of Bhimsen Thapa and then two other Mukhtiar, the prime ministers of that time, and the rise of Janga Bahadur, followed by Kot massacre, Bhandarkhal massacre, and then very proactive loyalty of Rana prime ministers to the British rule, sending people, military in British Gurkha. All these interventions continued, and we thought that in 1950 we would go to a different way. But then 1950 treaty immediately put Nepal within the big influence of independent India. A couple of other very interesting phenomena took place at the meantime. After 1945, China became a republic, People's Republic, with a socialist system led by Communist Party of China. So America, which was so intensely engaged in China that time, had to withdraw it from Chinese territory. So the world started reshaping in a different way. Like the world was very competitively led by two ideology, capitalism followed by the West, and communism led by China and Russia in particular. But that was a moment of many countries rushing towards socialism. So vast part of East Europe became socialist part of the world. Cuba, Vietnam, and other. So the world got divided. India from 1965 sided to Soviet Union. So American felt they were losing grounds in Asia because India was siding Russia, China was a communist country, Vietnam had a terrible war with India, with America. So this is how Americans started, especially America and its allies started thinking that the western part of the world is losing its grounds in Asia. So therefore they intensified new strategies which I have discussed in my book called containment strategy. Sometimes it is specifically targeted to China, but in the meantime it is also directed to India because India being connected with Soviet Union. So it was somehow a double containment strategy followed by United States. So America had to withdraw from China in 1949, so it saw that Nepal is a safe place to be here. So Nepal was taken as a window to contain India and China. So we got involved in tricky problems of big powers. So people say that Nepal is in geopolitics, and Nepal geopolitical location, Nepal's geography itself is in disadvantage. The book discusses in a different way. I have thought, and I have discussed in the book in a different way, the geography is not the problem. Geography is very diverse characters in Nepal. So we have all kind of weathers, we have all kind of climates, we have all kind of plants, flora and faunas, and mountain and plain. So it's a beautiful landscape in fact. But problem is the intervention, interference, and intrusions of powers. So our territory being being located between China and India, so it was, I have said, either used as a cockpit or as a window by the Western power bloc to contain China and India. Therefore, we failed to streamline our development strategy. We failed to streamline our political strategy, and we failed to streamline our development strategy, in fact. Therefore, we remained behind. So I have discussed here. If we see the history of development in China, from 1978, after China opened up and began its reforms, started going up rapidly. In 1980s, its pace of development was further faster. In 90s, it became unprecedentedly rapid, and by the advent of new millennia, China became already a big economic power and became a second biggest economy. India also followed the track after 1988 to become an economic power. But if you see in that time, when these two countries started going up, we started going down. Political stability started falling in Nepal. From 1978 to 1990, if we see the economic indicators of development in Nepal, the statistics say that Nepal's economic growth was bigger to India and China. We were developing economy almost over 7-8%. Our industrial growth was becoming a momentum here in Nepal. So Nepal developed a lot of industries that time. Nepal started building infrastructures. We constructed the east-west highway. We connected to China from Kodari Rajmarga. We connected Kathmandu to Pokhara. So all these activities became very phenomenal. So we were actually better economy in South Asia. But when these two big countries became so economically powerful and so economically viable, then we were supposed to go up. Their economic development was supposed to spill into Nepal, but that didn't happen. They became richer, we became poor. So we started being falling in a trap of political chaos. Why? So this is the region where your question actually relates with. The reason lies here because a stronger China and a stronger India was not acceptable to the Western Bloc. So they came to Nepal with a number of projects. So our development was driven by donor funding. Our development were not chosen by the people, but they were installed in Nepal by World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and many other Western countries. And when they were installing these development projects, they were not looking into the welfare of people, but they were looking China and India. So they designed that way. So therefore, they probably thought that stable, stronger, and stable Nepal would not be good for enjoying Nepal's territory to implement containment strategy against China and India. So they started creating a kind of situation where Nepal was struggling within a system itself, ridden by chaos and instability. So they taught us that Nepal's development needs to have identity politics of every community. Sure, everybody should have their own identity. They said it first. The second time what they said is like, it didn't properly work. They said that, okay, you have to have a liberal democracy. We went for that. When we had a liberal democracy, then they said that government cannot work alone. You need to take help of NGOs, and donor agencies will contribute in development of Nepal through NGOs. We believed it. So 49,000 NGOs were created in Nepal. INGOs came here, and these INGOs started dividing Nepal in terms of territory. Okay, Madhes is different, hill is different, mountain is different. And between that, what they at the beginning of the new millennium said that it's not only identity politics, so you have to go with, but you need to go federal structure. If you have a federal structure, probably you can have a better situation because you can devolve power down to governments at home. Then we agreed for that. After we agreed for the federalism, and then they said that this federalism should be identity-based, ethnic identity-based federalism. So they brought ethnicity in federalism. We somehow believed it, but then we started sensing that something is going wrong. How it is possible for Nepal to have an ethnic identity-based federalism where we have 129 different ethnic groups and several languages and other, how it is possible? Then the tussle started. Okay, the tussle started between two groups. Some people started saying that no, federalism is not good for Nepal. Others said that federalism is the only option for addressing the problem, and the federalism should be founded on ethnicity and other. Then it also was rejected by the people in the election of the second Constituent Assembly, and then they started going, okay, regionalism, one Madhes, one Pradesh. Whatever you do in the hills, that is different. So 7 states in hill, but one province in down in plain areas. And they also added the multinationalism concept. So you can see who was playing it. So that's why what I say is like, in a underdeveloped political, economic, and educational and rugged landscape of Nepal, we already had too many difficult problems and challenges to develop Nepal. But then these people, particularly the Western Bloc, the INGs over there, not to disturb Nepal and not to take the sovereignty of Nepal, but to implement their containment strategy against China and India. They came here and to keep Nepal grappling in this crisis, not to destroy it completely, but also not to let it go up in a pace of China and India, and contain Chinese and Indian influence in Nepal. Therefore, they started creating cracks in Nepalese population, cracks in Nepalese thinking pattern, and cracks in Nepalese geographical construction also. Therefore, It is not the geography of Nepal is the problem that I have said. What I have said is like, in a difficult situations like this, they brought interference. I have said in the book, the outside interested parties to look into China and to look into India. They wanted Nepal to be in a chaotic situation so that they could implement their strategy against these two countries. So for me, to be very specific, without any hesitation, what I say that it is the external intervention, it is the Western interest against China and India. They played in Nepal, they divided Nepalese population in terms of ethnicity, they divided Nepalese population in terms of religion, they divided Nepalese population in terms of their location of settlement in hills, Himal and Madhes. Also, they divided Nepalese population in terms of linguistic diversity, and we therefore lost our way of development. So that is the major reason that I have discussed here.
Many intellectuals of Nepal have been accusing some elements busy of in fuming chaos in Nepal. It is argued that some elements are working against national integration of Nepal. What do you think on this issue?
That's true. That's true. Like a lot of things I already explained. A huge number of intellectuals Nepal over the last 20 years have discussed in this or that way that Nepal has been suffering from external interference. But this internal interference that we have been talking about is in multi-layer, okay, in a different layer. The first layer is that our policies have been often influenced by the international organizations. Our development planning is influenced by the international organization. For example, we changed our education system in 1974, probably 2028 BS. So it was called New Education Policy. We lost everything, our cultural identity within the education system. It is so painful now. Like if you ask the younger children, who was the king in 1765, he united Nepal? They don't know. They even don't know what is the geographical structure of Nepal. So a kind of pseudo educational system was imposed in the name of the support in 1974, 2028. Okay, so that was the first biggest interference. If you go back to the time in 1956, an organization called Summer Linguistic Institute, called SIL, came to Nepal to support in scientific study of language. But actually it didn't do that. It was not involved in study and investigation of the linguistic scientific ideas in Nepal. It was directly involved in political affairs. It was in Nepal with its own helicopter, and it was flying every time to Mustang and Manang. And later on it was noticed that it was directly engaged in supporting Tibetan exiles living in Nepal to launch a rebellion or attack against Tibet. So Nepal had to take a big pain in it. Nepal in 1965 had to suppress this Khampa rebellion, which is known as Tibetan rebellion. But that organization was directly involved in it. And therefore in 1976, when everything was disclosed, this organization was asked to go out. This is one type of interference. Another type of interference what we see is the donor-driven project activities. There are a lot of donor agencies here in Kathmandu, but they are not giving money to the state, but they have been distributing money to NGOs and INGOs. So often they guide Nepal to do what they want to do, but it's not the need of Nepal is reflected in this project. That is another thing. From 1992 specifically, what serious interference occurred in Nepal was the induction of neoliberalism. And neoliberalism said that market determines everything. It's not the state. So states should disinvest from industrial sector. States should come out of market. States should come out of trade and everything. So in that way, what the after 1992, the government of that time did was like they started privatizing industries. Post attack of the policy of neoliberalism that time went against all those industries. They were established in Nepal as a gift of Chinese government to the Nepalese people. The first scapegoat was Basbari shoe factory, then Brikuti paper mill in Gaidakot, and the Butol cotton thread industry. Painfully enough, even the trolley bus, the electrical bus that connected Bhaktapur in Kathmandu, was removed. And you can see other industries, over hundreds of industries was privatized in few coins exactly. So neoliberalism destroyed the emerging kind of industrial growth rate in Nepal and pushed Nepal to the situation of pauperization. So it was neoliberalism. After 96, 98, there was a political direct intervention in Nepal, because Nepal had gone into a terrible political insurgency that time. Maoists launched the People's War. So conflict was overpowering in every part of the country. Sure. In the name of supporting the government to contain communist insurgency in Nepal, so guns started coming, the ideas started coming. So there were several Western countries putting money on it. In the beginning, they put money to suppress Maoist insurgency. But after 1998 to 1996 to 2006, there was a massive support to the state to suppress communists. There was a serious human rights violation at that time. But from 2006, they started supporting somehow ethnic identity politics and federalism issue and state restructuring issues, which was the major agenda of CP and Maoist that time. So that went to the support of Maoist agenda at that time. So what we can see is that the accusation of many intellectuals over the last 20 years in shaping Nepal's state, it is not the Nepalese intellectuality, it is not the Nepalese political mind, it is not the Nepalese indigenous mind is working, but it is absolutely driven by outsiders. So looking from 1974, changing the education to the donor-driven development projects, and then in 1992 liberalism, and from 1996 direct political intervention, and by 2006 federalism, by even until even today, Nepal is seriously affected by these foreign agendas. You can see everywhere, like every state institution is having engagement of this institution, the foreign institution. If you go to judiciary, their projects have been designed and implemented by the foreign donor agencies or foreign INGOs or other. If you go to state, even the parliament, the structure of the parliament hall is supported by INGOs and donor agencies. I think even many ministries, they're both logistic and planning, intellectual or logistic, we can say. Both intellectual and logistic supports come from the donor agencies. And if you see the education today, education is completely under guidance of the foreign consultants, and it is the area where biggest chunk of money has been here, and therefore education is absolutely not what we want to do. So one study done by Nepalese with regard to the foreign support over the last many years from 1952 to 9, Nepal obtained 700 billion rupees support from the Western aid agencies. Larger chunk of that support went to identity consciousness politics. Where is this money used is a question. So only there are 3 countries, Japan, India and China, who have done substantial support to Nepal. Like Japan has constructed some roads, Japan has constructed some scientific research facilities. China is engaged in building road infrastructures, industries, and even its support after earthquake in reconstruction of the demolished cultural sites and other is big. And India also is engaged in development of infrastructure, hydroelectricity and other. But what is the support of the Western countries? Is there any substantial development project that people have been benefited from this money? Is a question. Therefore, the accusation of the intellectual that Nepal has been used by some countries for their interests has evidence.
Why Prachanda's statement regarding American stand against President Maduro of Venezuela came to controversy?
I think it's not controversial in fact, but it is brought into controversy. There are 2 things we need to very clearly understand. We believe on Charter of the United Nations. Okay. We also believe on international law, both customary and modern, which governs the relations between states. So we have an international law governing the states' relationship, the convention known as Montevideo Convention of State Relations 1933. It says that every state has full freedom to enjoy its political system, its judicial system, its economic system, its foreign policy, and its administrative system. And then there is another resolution adopted by the General Assembly in 1965, which relates to the inadmissibility of foreign interference in external or internal affairs of the state. So question is like whether Prachanda's statement to support Maduro of Venezuela is right or wrong is not an issue of debate, because it's not a cause of controversy. What is the cause of controversy is the intention of United States to intervene in Venezuelan internal affairs. So when America says not the existing president but somebody else as the president of Venezuela, so it sparked a kind of tension in the world, and it suggested that America does not believe in international law. So there was a euphoria of many people, many countries across the world to say that American action is not right. That was exactly the situation 2 years before, when America suggested to save the capital of Israel in Jerusalem. So therefore, all countries stood in General Assembly and said that this is American wrong policy. American cannot do it. So similar situation. So China opposed the idea of America, suggesting that it's not Maduro but somebody else is the president. Russia did the same. India did the same. Turkey did, and many other countries. in vicinity of Venezuela and other part of the world did it. So for me, it is a responsibility of Democratic Republic of Nepal to stand in favor of the people of Venezuela. Okay, look it from the international perspective. So that's not controversy. That cannot be controversy. Nobody can discuss about that kind of that kind of action of a state to support the international law telling that don't interfere in another's affairs. That's one aspect from looking from the international perspective. But every country also has some kind of internal perspective. So Nepal, as we discussed before, Nepal locates between India and China in a geopolitical situation. So it has certain preconditions to follow its foreign policy. So that's why what we have said is like we always has a commitment to Article 2 of the Charter of the United Nations 1. We are a member of the SAARC, and SAARC Charter also specifies that no intervention of each country to another. So no one can intervene in one another's affairs. We also believe the principle of Panchashila, and we also have a tradition of believing in non-alignment. So in this situation, when China and America are having a serious controversy in their trade now, a kind of debacle, a kind of standoff exists right now, so situation is little volatile. So Nepal's position to maintain relations between China and America is in a very crucial time. So this is a time where we have to take big precaution. So I have a very very concrete and very specific suggestions from the very beginning that had Nepal government or the Communist Party of Nepal chosen to react against that more in a different way would be good for Nepal. So instead of Prachanda showing the statement in support of Venezuela's president, had it been done by the International Department of Communist Party of Nepal, would be much more professional. And the Prime Minister and the President of Communist Party of Nepal would call Maduro on telephone and could say that, okay, we stand for your support. And could tell that we are in a difficult situation, so we will take this responsibility of supporting you in a different way. Okay, why that? When we were in blockade in 2015, did Venezuela come out and support us? No, it didn't. Why it didn't? Because Venezuela's situation is exactly what is like Nepal. So it supported internally that no powerful state should cause harms to the small country. But it informally supported the Nepal's cause, but it didn't make a statement. So we were supposed to do the same. But then it was not a big issue. It doesn't make much difference to America, China and India. But then people here in Nepal wanted to use Prachanda's statement not as an issue of the international politics, but they want to exploit and capitalize Prachanda's statement to oppose the existing government. So that was a kind of political strategy of people who oppose this government, who oppose the Communist Party. So that's how it was brought into controversy, but ramifications were bad for both. Ramifications were bad for both because Communist Party and government of Nepal were not very much supported by general people the way they very blatantly came out and supported the president of Venezuela. But opposing the statement and supporting the move of India, the opposition party also fell into trap of more imperialistic orientation. Therefore, that actually caused harms to the both. So I think this controversy has both external and internal dimension. Some external forces wanted to raise this issue and then create difficulties to the government. That was one. And another was like some people wanted to utilize the statement in favor of the opposition, but the major interest everybody was supposed to look into is the Nepal's interest and the Nepalese people's interest. So what I saw in this controversy is like there are very big number of intellectuals in these countries who actually do not feel themselves as concerned to the interest of the people and nation, but they want to conduct a kind of hyper politics that actually creates problem to the nation.
Why Nepal America joint exercise of military is opposed by intellectuals? Has it connection with Indo-Pacific strategy? How it affect Nepal and Nepali?
This question and the previous question that you made, in my opinion, also has to be seen from the same perspective. If you look it from the country's relations perspective in the international arena, joint military drill or the exercise between one and another country is not a big issue. Like China and India have done drill in the past. China and America has done drill in the past. Okay, every country from the world, sometimes they discuss and want to learn from each other regarding their technologies and expertise regarding military exercise, and they do it. So not a big issue actually. It's not a big issue actually. So Nepal already had a military exercise with China in the past. Also Nepal had some kind of military exercise with India also in the past. So it is not problem to have a kind of military exercise with America. It's a sovereign country and America is a sovereign country, so they can do it. So it should not be a concern of any state. But problem is not this. Problem is where they do the exercise is the major question. So when two countries want to do a kind of military exercise or drill, then one fundamental rule or ethic is that when they do it, they should not create negative impact to another country, or they should not provoke another country to do it. They should not give a kind of sense that these two countries have been engaged to create disadvantage to another country. So why there is a controversy probably, and why so many intellectuals in Nepal have been talking about America-Nepal joint exercise is not because they are not supposed to do, but because they did it in Mustang. Because Mustang is a frontier district. Mustang lies in border with China, and it's a sensitive zone. If two countries organize a kind of military exercise in a border of in a place bordering with another country, though China has not said anything so far, I have not heard China's comment about it. But it is right for Nepalese intellectuals to raise this question, because China might take it not positively, or China may take not healthy for Nepal-China relation. So that government was supposed to look into. Therefore, this issue has been becoming an issue not because America and Nepal did the exercise, but they did this exercise in Mustang, and therefore Nepal's government, Nepal's military and Nepal's strategists should be very much conscious not to allow any military exercise that provokes another neighbor. So neither close to Indian border nor close to Chinese border. So they could do it in Dankuta, they could do it in Surkhet, they could do it in anywhere. Why Mustang is chosen? So people have a speculation. There are two speculations. One speculation is that America indirectly want to test how China will react this kind of issues in future. Another speculation is that Mustang is reportedly said having a huge number of uranium content. So maybe the objective behind might be different. And this drill is also become controversial for another reason, because few weeks before there was a bill brought in the Parliament of Nepal which allows individual and organizations to develop radioactive or atomic energy kind of exercises in Nepal. So an individual is going to be given a license for exploring atomic and radioactive substances and do kind of practices with regard to that. So there are a couple of things connected. And lastly, as you pointed the issue, is it connected with the Indo-Pacific strategy? Yes, in the sense that America is making Indo-Pacific strategy is a fundamental strategy of containing China and India. There are two objectives. America developing a concept of Indo-Pacific strategy want to create a blockade for a smooth and unrestricted access of China to other part of the world. So the objective is to block China somehow, one. Another objective, though not seen very well and particularly directed to India, which India itself is not able to understand, is to create a detachment between Iran and India. Okay, the reason is India is still so intensely engaging with Iran in its trade is that over 80% of the fuel consumed in India comes from Iran. So India cannot detach. So until India is not detached from Iran, it is not possible for United States to deal Iran or to put into strict embargo. So there is a indirect containment applicable to India to detach India from communications with Russia and Iran. So definitely it might have a connections with this kind of exercises, but looking Mustang's issue from that perspective might have some connections, but would not be very good to ramify to that extent that Mustang, the exercise between Nepal and army would contribute a lot to the Indo-Pacific. But the main question is that Nepal should not fail to understand that Nepal can exist healthily if it is able to maintain balanced relation with its neighbor. The very proverb that Nepalese often say, you can ignore your relatives, but you cannot ignore your neighbors. We can stay without America, but we cannot stay without China and India. Therefore, we should be conscious not to let anything happen or anything or make our neighbors feel anything that jeopardizes our conventional balance between these two countries. So that is the reason probably is the major cause of disputes or controversy being emerged in Nepal. So its direct connections with the strategic Indo-Pacific strategy, yes, but it's not too big a strategy that can paper Indo-Pacific strategy by having this small number of exercises. So instead of looking it from Indo-Pacific connection, I pragmatically look into this issue as a detriment in conventional balance of relation between Nepal and China and Nepal and India.